Welcome to Couch Quarterbacks.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Couch Quarterbacks. We have our Week 3 review. I forgot what it was called for a second. It's been a very long day at the office, y'all. I'm Ben Steinberg. Joined with me is Roach, as always.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? And like Stein said, we got our Week 3 recap episode.
I almost said preview.
Our Week 3 preview after the games have already happened. Now, hey, we get all of our picks right, isn't that right, Stein?
Yeah, we can say exactly what you can expect. For those of you who record and watch the next day, I don't know of anyone who does that, but I feel like there's a very select few of people that would do that.
I think the age requirement is kind of 50 plus for that. You gotta tape it on the VCR and watch it the next day. But we had another great Sunday of NFL football. A rough day, I should say, for the rookie quarterbacks, especially Stein.
Yeah, one of the worst rookie days we've seen in a while. Y'all do stay tuned for Week 4 because we'll have our official kind of top 5 rookies and top 5 performers.
A quarter season report.
Quarter season review. We'll try to do that every 4 games, even though there are 17.
Yeah, the
it's not
extra game is...
Whoever messed up the fractions, really is messing with my head. But let's get into it with the first game on the docket, and we have the Colts, who fell to the Titans 25-16. Straight off the bat, Wentz actually was healthy.
Well, I guess you could say healthy as in he was out there.
He played the whole game, yeah.
Yes, he still had and was dealing with his 2 sprained ankles. The Colts falling to 0-3 on the season, just had a tough draw the first couple weeks of the season with injuries and then with the teams that they faced.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things, Stein, so the Colts offense to start out just with Wentz has been kind of average, I think you would say.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a tight end.
But now with Carson Wentz playing at less than 100%, I think a lot of people didn't think he was going to end up suiting up and playing this past Sunday. The Colts offense just did not look good. Wentz was definitely less mobile with the sprained ankles, couldn't really escape the pockets, was very rushed and getting rid of the ball earlier than he wanted to. So just a not a good performance for Carson Wentz, even though he did tough it out and play in the game.
Yeah, running backs weren't that good either. I mean, Nyheim Hines was a factor in the receiving game, as he has been, but still, neither guy got a touchdown through the on the ground.
I think Hines had a receiving touchdown in the game.
Neither JT nor Hines, and JT still has yet to find the end zone so far this season. So just a struggle. But I will say Michael Pittman has kind of emerged as the go-to weapon for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, he's had 12 targets in the past 2 weeks, so I think a lot of people kind of took the risk in fantasy of drafting him late to be that wide receiver 1, especially since T.Y. Hilton's been hurt these first couple weeks of the season, and he posted a dud week 1, but these past 2 weeks really drawing those targets to be the wide receiver 1. So he had a decent ball game and showed that he is the number 1 receiver for this team.
Yeah.
One big injury that they had, Quinn Nelson, I think is just copying whatever Carson Wentz does in a bad way. Because remember, he had the same foot surgery in the preseason that Wentz had. Wentz has the sprained ankles last week. Quinn Nelson left this game with an ankle injury. They diagnosed it as a sprained ankle, not a high ankle sprain, which would have been a multi-week injury. So he's day-to-day. Hopefully we'll be able to suit up for them next week when they take on the Dolphins. Just looking ahead for them, they got the Dolphins next week, the Ravens the week after that, both of those games on the road, and then they finally get an easier matchup against the Texans. So looking for that first win of the season, maybe get it next week. No Tua for the Dolphins.
Dolphins are that's a winnable game for them. Ravens could be a tough battle. But we've seen the Ravens be exposed, but I think they can beat the Texans. So they'll finally be able to get that win and prove that they aren't as bad as their record shows.
In the middle of their season, they got the Texans, the Jets, and Jaguars in like a 4-week
span. They're going to play the Jags twice too, and the Texans twice as well. Let's move on to the other team in the division that they have to play twice, that they lost against, and that is going to be the Titans. This is probably Tannehill's best game so far, even though he threw 2 picks.
Yeah, he had the 3 touchdown passes, even with the 2 interceptions. So he only had 1 passing touchdown going into this game. A much better performance from Ryan Tannehill, and even with A.J. Brown getting injured early on in this ball game, diagnosed as a strained hamstring. He's going to be week to week, so probably won't see him next week, but hopefully won't have to go onto the IR less than a 3-week timetable for the recovery for him. And then Julio apparently got a little banged up yesterday too.
Julio still had a decent game though. It's not like a great Julio-esque performance from years ago, not a vintage one, but still played pretty well in his stead in the absence of A.J. Brown.
Yeah, Tannehill only had about 200 yards passing, so those terms, then he was okay. But the leading receiver was actually Nick Westbrook. I don't even know how to pronounce the second part of the last name, but he had like 53 yards receiving or something like that.
Yeah, and he had a lot of targets too, so maybe potential if this A.J. Brown thing's looking, maybe look for him fantasy pickups. But the name of this game was Titans offense, and what they did was rush Derrick Henry 28 times for 113 yards. Didn't get a touchdown, but they were throwing in the red zone.
I was going to say, it was never any sort of big Derrick Henry runs that he had, but just constantly getting a couple of yards here and there on every single play. So just a solid effort from Derrick Henry, and they they're fortunate enough to play the Jets next week, Stein. So
that's going to be a great start, Derrick Henry. Bottom line from this game, though, Titans offense is starting to develop with Tannehill and then, Derrick Henry. I asked the question, Roach, are the Colts really this bad or have they just been unlucky?
Yeah, I think they've just been unlucky. I talked about in the offseason how I like Carson Wentz being able to get that change of scenery going over to the Colts, just a much better situation for them. I think they've just had a tough draw facing the two teams from the NFC West and then facing this Titans team who has made the playoffs the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, and coming off a great performance by Derrick Henry, back-to-back weeks.
Hopefully just with Wentz being out there, it doesn't aggravate either of those ankle injuries, can stay healthy, and then once they get to the middle of the season when they're playing some of those weaker teams, then they need to take advantage of that. So yeah. I definitely don't think they're as bad as their 0-3 start.
No, not at all. Moving on to the Falcons taking on the Giants in New Jersey. The Falcons escape with a 17-14 win, and this was a walk-off Young Hoku. I think it was 40-yarder to end it. Basically, the team with the ball in their hand at last was going to win this game.
Yeah, a great win for the Falcons. We kind of thought that this was going to be a toss-up. Two teams that started off 0-2 on the season.
Giants were favored going into it.
It was at New York, so Eli Manning...
That gave them the boost they needed on the favors.
Eli Manning getting honored in his retirement into the Giants Hall of Fame. But the Falcons, able to get their first victory of the season. Matt Ryan not looking bad in the ball game.
Played his best game of the season so far. 27 of 36.
Which I guess isn't saying much compared to his first two
and
games.
2 TDs. I mean, those are good numbers. Not amazing. Not going to light up anything. Was sacked 3 times. And this is a little bit concerning. Not a single pass was over 28 yards. Completed.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Ryan hasn't been a deep throw. I think that 28-yard completion was on the last drive of the ball game to Cordell Patterson on a screenplay that actually set up that game-winning field goal. So it really hasn't been much of a deep threat. I saw something earlier today where Calvin Ridley is only averaging like 8.8 yards per completion or yards per catch, where he was up around like 15 yards per catch last season. So maybe seeing that effect of not having Julio out there on the other side is just kind of bringing Matt Ryan's target depth down.
And maybe that's Arthur Smith's offense is, shorter passes where like more West Coast where, you're going to get 4 or 5 yards on a pass rather than the 17, 18-yard gains that we have been used to as Falcons fans. Receiving core was kind of weird because the 2 touchdowns scored by the Falcons receiving core were to Lee Smith and Olamide Zaccheaus.
Yeah, so Calvin Ridley led the team 8 catches for 61 yards. But 2 kind of no-name guys on this Falcons offense were the ones that caught the touchdown passes. Kyle Pitts was really a non-factor in this ball game.
2 catches off 3 targets. We just got to we hope we can get those targets up.
Yeah, and one of the catches was on one of those last drives as well for 25 yards.
He did have a game, kind of a help that drive, a first down catch, which is good. We hope we can get him more. But I mean, the MVP for the Falcons right now is Young Hoku,
which is sad to say because that was how it was for a lot of games last season as well.
I will say that Cam Nizelek was better. He had I think his long was a 58, so no shanks this game.
It's pretty sad when you have to say, "Oh, our punter was better in this ball game." You're hoping that your punter has doesn't have to even show up on the field in the ball game.
Giants side of the ball, Daniel Jones wasn't bad. 24 of 35, 266. And then, he tries to do his rushing, 8 for 39. He had 2 fumbles, but he recovered them so they didn't go down as fumbles.
I was gonna say he didn't really make any mistakes in this ball game. You saw that it was a close game. When they were showing on Red Zone, it seemed like every time we saw that game, the Giants had the football.
Yeah, I don't think I even saw one out offensive play for the Falcons until the field goal.
Yeah, with the field goals, and then they would probably quickly show the 2 Falcons touchdowns before that. But...
Also, we have an all-time Eli face on on the Monday night broadcast right now. I just have to point. We were talking about Eli Manning. I mean, just look at that.
Yeah, we're watching the Monday Night Football game right now while we're filming this. So we have the Peyton and Eli broadcast on. But Saquon had a decent game.
Saquon finally finds the end zone.
Yeah, 16 for 51 on the ground. Was much better as a receiver. His best game as a receiver this season. 6 catches for 43 yards. So getting involved not only as a runner but as a passer. Yeah. And I think your Devontae Booker, the backup, was actually a healthy scratch. Yeah, so it's just kind of showing how they're just slowly taking the reins off of Saquon and getting him back up to that full bell cow role that he was before he got the ACL injury.
Yeah. Overall, the Giants receivers weren't great. I think Kenny Golladay was the leading receiver, but Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard both go down with injuries.
Their whole receiving core is banged up. I mean, going into the game, Golladay was dealing with a hip injury. Evan Ingram returned from his calf injury, but he had a costly fumble in the ball game around halftime. And then, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, both getting hamstring injuries. So you saw some more no-name guys get a couple more looks for this receiving core of the Giants. And then a big loss on the defensive side as well. Blake Martinez, torn ACL, out for the season.
Yeah, Blake Martinez, kind of a defensive leader for them. They did have a rookie, a 7th-round rookie step up out of UGA, and that was Tate Crowder, who had 11 tackles. So that's kind of, a good look for them on their defense. But, bottom line with this game, Roach, 2 bad teams. One had to win. Well, didn't have to, but, we knew one was going to win.
We still could have had a tie.
And in the end, Falcons did more right than the Giants did. So
that's a 17-4.
Or did less wrong things than the Giants did.
Yeah, I brought out my Falcons hat for the Falcons victory. So
I appreciate it.
They get one of their probably few wins on the season.
All right.
Let's move on to the next game, which is the Buffalo Bills trouncing the Washington football team.
Back-to-back trouncings by Buffalo.
Yeah, 43-21 was the final score, and Josh Allen finally returned to his 2020 form. First 2 games of the 2021 season had a couple decent ball games, but didn't really light up the stat sheet. And this one, he really did. 358 yards passing, Stein, 5 total touchdowns, one of them being a rushing touchdown, and then no interceptions. He looked great all day. Emmanuel Sanders had a couple touchdowns. Cole Beasley had 12 catches in the ball game.
Distributing the ball just well to all guys.
Stephon Diggs was still consistent,
Zach
even
Moss.
with being the 3rd or 4th option for the day. But on the flip side of that, this Washington football team defense has not looked good in these first 3 games.
Has not lived the part. And even going back to our preview shows, we were talking about this team had an amazing defense, a who's who of amazing front guys. They must be getting destroyed in the secondary or something. Something's got to give.
Well, not only in the secondary, Stein, but 92 points allowed so far on the season. So you chalk it up to 3 games, that's 30 a ball game.
Yeah.
Only 6 sacks in those 3 games, so that's averaging 2 sacks a ball game.
That's middle of the NFL, if not lower middle. That's kind of Falcons-esque for a defense with a lot of names.
I was going to say, that was the Washington football team was 2nd or 3rd in sacks last season. So even then, you would say it's the secondary because they're allowing so many points, but even on the front, they're not getting to the quarterback as much as they were last season. So just some problems on the defensive side for the football team. And then Taylor Heineke, we said that this was going to be a big test for him facing a good defense for Buffalo coming off their shutout. He had 2 interceptions in this game, had a couple touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, but overall just wasn't that impressive in the ball game.
Yeah, this game was pretty much decided, so he's getting some garbage time stats. And, I like Heineke, and I like this Washington football team. They just might not be as good as advertised. And, I hate that we fell for that.
Well, I wouldn't even say that they're not as good as advertised. I think just the biggest thing is that you saw last season, the reason they were so good is because their defense was so dominant. Yeah. So even having
also unexpectedly, good too. You could make a case that the fact people probably took them more lightly because they're like, oh, this is the same old Washington football team that we've seen that can't score on a cheap
I was gonna say, because you
know?
think last season like it was Haskins and like Alex Smith that were leading them on the offensive side. So because their defense is doing so bad, their offense isn't anything special. So that's why it's definitely showing on both sides of why they're not performing.
Yeah.
And
I will say Antonio Gibson had a good day though. That's one bright spot we can take away from their offense.
yeah, he had like a 73-yard touchdown reception. I mean, besides that, he really didn't do much on the ground against this Bills defense. I think it was like 16 carries for 31 yards. But yeah, did have that long touchdown receptions, broke a couple tackles. So that was an impressive play for him. But besides that, on the offensive side, wasn't much to talk about for a Washington football team.
Bottom line, the Bills are going to... This game shows that they're running the table in the AFC, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think we're going to look later in the season, especially when we talk about the Steelers, but that Steelers Week 1 victory against the Bills is probably going to be kind of a surprise victory.
Yeah, and then, overall Washington football team's defense has just been disappointing. I think they'll get it right eventually, but right now it's not looking good. And speaking of not looking good... This is probably the worst game for Bears fans they have ever seen. The Bears fall to the Browns 26-6, and probably one of the most poor offensive showings we've ever seen in our time watching.
I was going to say, surprisingly, not the poorest offensive showing from the Bears in their team history. I know they have a long history.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying this is probably the worst showing we've seen, but
it definitely is, because this is the second worst offensive performance that the Bears have had. The other one was back in 1981, so way before our time.
Give it 5 years, give the Bears 5 years, just saying.
Yeah, but Justin Fields got his first start and just did not look good in this ball game. Just 6 of 20 passing, 68 yards, sacked 9 times in this ball game for 67 yards total, so that equates to 1 net passing yard, because in the NFL they take those sacks away from the team passing yards. College, it's against the quarterback's rushing yards. So
Justin
overall,
Tucker
just 1 net
66
passing
yards, 1 yard. Anyways, it just, I don't know what was going on with Matt Nagy and what the practice. Did they not practice an offense with Justin Fields playing quarterback?
We talked about it going into the game this weekend, that Matt Nagy was probably going to try and ruin Justin Fields, make him look bad in this ball game, so he looks smart for having Andy Dalton start the season.
Nagy's seat went from 100 degrees to 1,000 degrees with this, Roach. Honestly, it's just not a good look. Bears fans have already been calling for Nagy's head.
Oh, I've been saying it since probably the first week of the season that Nagy's going to be the first coach to get fired this season. And just with this showing, like you said, it just further puts that set in stone.
I mean, no one wants to see Fields struggle, I don't think, especially us in Georgia, him being a local kid. We want to see him succeed, and I think he was set up to fail. And, I will say probably made some rookie mistakes, as we expect, but... bad.
If you're sacked 9 times, you really can't blame your quarterback in that situation. I mean, the only thing that you can think of is him holding the ball on too long.
Corey Peters was getting destroyed by Myles Garrett.
Jason Peters, yeah.
Corey Peters.
Yeah, Myles Garrett
are they brothers?
had a franchise record 4.5 sacks on the season. But yeah, so overall 47 total yards of offense from this Bears team. Going into next week, it's even more interesting because Nagy in his press conference today on Monday said he can't say who the Week 4 starting quarterback will be.
We're getting into Gase territory, honestly.
Which is not someone you want to get compared to.
This is some Gase, cryptic shit that we've seen,
But that's what Justin Fields apparently is dealing with, a little bit of a hand injury, not anything serious.
Oh, you think being sacked 9 times?
or is this just a hand injury that Nagy is claiming that he has? So you know how in the MLB they'll say a pitcher that's struggling has an arm injury to put him on the injured list.
Has tendinitis or something,
Yeah, so apparently Nick Foles has now entered the chat
of
potential starting quarterbacks Week 4. Andy Dalton, of course, was week to week with his knee injury, and then now Fields with the ineffectiveness and dealing with the hand injury. Who knows who we're going to see a quarterback next week?
Honestly, Mike Glennon might make an appearance, Roach. But the Bears, just dumpster fire. I still think their defense is good, but, overall just dumpster fire. Browns did pretty much what they needed to do. The chunt worked. Baker was good all around. And this time, instead of being Chubb, it was Kareem Hunt who was doing better.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt had a great performance. 81 yards on the ground, 74 receiving yards, had a touchdown on the day. Nick Chubb was decent as well.
Yeah,
had
but
84 yards.
Nick Chubb was the better runner, but Hunt was the better all-around offensive weapon.
Definitely, and he was the one with the touchdown on the game. They had 215 total rush yards. I mean, that's just the Browns in a nutshell. OBJ's return, he had a decent performance.
Surprisingly, usually guys' returns are usually, hampered with slowness because of their injuries, but played well.
Yeah, he had 9 targets, 5 catches, 77 yards. Played 52 snaps, so 64% of their snaps for the ball game. So was out there for a decent bit of time, and they're definitely going to need him, especially since Jarvis Landry's on the IR for the next couple weeks. So this is a nice performance, like you said, against a decent Bears defense, even though their offense didn't show up yesterday.
Yeah,
a decent Bears defense.
And I mean, the Browns have an improved defense. But I don't know if it was their defense just playing really well, or there's just this Bears offense just being the most ineffective offense ever.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of both there. But Matt Nagy, probably his weeks are numbered as the head coach of the Bears.
Yeah, we're on Matt Nagy fire watch. Bottom line of this game, Bears offense, no matter who's running it, I think, is going to be just complete ass. I think the Browns played almost a flawless game in this game. And this is going to put them up there, as one of the contenders in the AFC along with the Bills.
Definitely. So let's move on to the next game. Another exciting game with an
was
exciting finish. The Ravens making history. Justin Tucker making history with a 66-yard field goal, NFL record as time expires. Ravens come back and win, beat the Lions 19-17.
Yeah, ball hits the crossbar on the kick. It was straight on. It was perfect accuracy. It hit the back of the crossbar and just enough to bounce on the net, and that showed everyone and went through.
No, Stein, so my depth perception is so bad. When
we all watched it live.
I was going to say, I don't know if you heard me say it like when I first watched it, but I thought that the ball, when it bounced off the crossbar, I thought it bounced off the line to start the end zone. Like, I thought it was that short.
You thought, so you were like...
And then, everyone was going crazy, and I saw them go like this. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, you did a backwards Vikings guy.
Yeah, backwards Vikings radio announcer. But, yeah, I thought that he missed it, and that it was, very short. And then, everyone else, y'all were going crazy, and I was like, wait, why? Why is everyone going nuts about it?
The reason I knew it made it because it bounced off the back net.
Hit the
back net. So that's how we knew. 66-yarder, the new NFL record, breaks Matt Prater's previous record set in Mile High, which is interesting because we thought if there's going to be a kicking record, it's either going to be Mile High, but a dome stadium could also be a potential without any wind. And just,
I would say Mile High is a bigger advantage than a dome, though.
Yeah, I would say so too. So, are we gonna see if the Broncos play the Ravens a 70?
Well, the funny thing is Matt Prater actually attempted a 64-yard field goal, which we'll get to that game later on.
68-yarder, you mean?
68-yarder, yes. So he attempted an NFL record field goal as well on the day that his was broken. A tale
of two kicks.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll get to that game in a couple minutes.
I will say before the kick though, because that's the story of this game. There were some interesting tidbits, and one being a 4th and 19 converted by the Ravens.
Yeah, so all Lions fans are complaining because that field goal shouldn't even have happened, but them letting up the 4th and 19 play, the catch to Sammy Watkins that eventually set up that field goal. But the one that the Lions fans are all complaining about, Stein,
Lions get screwed by the refs again.
But the delay of game penalty that wasn't called. So of course everyone on the television
5-yard penalty would have been a 71-yarder.
You saw the double zeros on the board for about a second or two. Doesn't get called the snap. Jackson gets the snap about a second or two after the double zeros, and they
to clock it, right?
Yeah, well, they end up throwing the ball out of bounds just to waste 4 or 5 seconds on the clock.
The interesting thing here is the game clock on the TV score bug is not as accurate as the game clock that the refs have. It's usually a little bit of a delay.
But there's no way it was 2 seconds.
Yeah, there was a few breaths. There were a few breaths in there.
Yeah, because what usually happens is that they'll look at the stadium's game clock.
Yeah, which is right in their line of sight.
Play clock, excuse me. And then they'll look at the quarterback or the center, and if the football is still with the center, then that's when you throw the delay of game penalty. So unless it was a complete turnaround, he was looking at the one on the other side, he has to flip around and then watch the play after.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that there's going to be any grievance filed by the Lions. I mean, the Lions just are an unlucky team. But speaking of unlucky, Hollywood Brown, I don't know if this
man.
is just a yikes kind of game for him.
No, and the funny thing is, like, I was talking him up so much. Like, I don't know if I did it as much on the podcast, but I was like telling people, I'm like, man, Hollywood Brown might actually be like the
really
legit
emerged as a number one
wide receiver one for this team. He had 2 great games the first 2 weeks of the season. Drops 3 passes for 3 would have been touchdowns.
2 on the same drive, yeah.
And 2 he was wide open on. That, like, you and I could have caught the pass on the play.
Let's not be too hasty.
But yeah, so 3 drops, so would have been 3 touchdowns. Ends up ruining a great performance for Hollywood in the ball game. But overall, I guess it ends up not mattering. But we wouldn't have had that 66-yard field goal.
Yeah,
if
it wouldn't have been a nail
those.
biter for Ravens fans because this is not a game the Ravens need to lose, especially after beating the Chiefs. To really bolster their record.
Don't you love football? Like, they go from a comeback win against the best team in football, at least the best team in the AFC.
On paper.
and then they have to struggle and make history to win against the Detroit Lions. But on the Lions side of the football, great game for their 2 running backs, DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams both had a rushing touchdown. TJ Hawkinson, who had been just a target hog the first couple weeks, posted a big-time dud. Yeah. Just 2 catches for 10 yards on only 2 targets.
Goff's been decent, though. You do got to admit. We don't have his numbers exactly, but he's been serviceable as the guy.
Yeah, and when you get to your bottom line, I mean, I don't think the Lions are awful. Yeah, we were going in thinking they were going to be the worst team in the NFL. Them and the Texans is probably the 2 worst teams. They've been
scrappy. They've been pretty scrappy.
They had that comeback against the 49ers where they at least had a chance to win the ball game.
Yeah.
They had this game now against the Ravens. I'm trying to think.
I mean, the Packers, they weren't going to win that game.
But they were up at halftime in that ball game, so they've at least shown signs of playing decent football for at least a small period of time. They just need to equate it out to
they need 4 quarters of good football.
Yeah, to a full ball game.
They're definitely going to win a few games, but still they're not going to win their division.
No.
Yeah, so that was you already talked about the bottom line. I do think the Ravens have flaws, even though they're still classified as one of the better AFC teams. I think they have flaws.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Lamar Jackson was their leading rusher, but the 3 running backs between Latavius Murray, Tyson Williams, and Devontae Freeman just kept all splitting work, none of them being effective, which I went on a huge rant. I'm not going to go on it here, but I went on a huge rant of Tyson Williams not getting enough carries in the ball game and with him being the best running back. But hopefully they can figure out their run game.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the Saints at the Patriots. Saints were able to take this one 28-13. Just another efficient day for Jameis.
Yeah, I mean, 21 passes, 128 yards, but he did still have 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So the efficiency, kind of like what he had in Week 1 in their win over the Packers. So a decent day for Jameis, great day for Kamara on the ground. He found the end zone as well. But a big loss on their offense is their left tackle, Teron Armstead's going to miss several weeks with an elbow injury, so that's a big loss to their offensive line. It's crazy how the Saints have 2 wins on the season, but just their receivers are so bad. Like Marquez Callaway did have a touchdown in this ball game. Yeah, 4 for 41 and a touchdown, but just all these no-name receivers and tight ends that they have just are doing nothing, but they're over 500.
Throw Taysom Hill in there someplace. He
had a rushing touchdown in the ball game too.
Yeah. And I think the Saints defense though has really been the name of the game for them, and they've been playing well against the Patriots and the Packers, who are 2 really good coach teams.
Yeah, they've definitely been much better than we thought that they were going to be going into this season. Mac Jones had his first rough game of the season, had to throw the ball 51 times.
Yeah, which is weird to see on a Patriots stat line, a guy throwing the ball 51 times.
With just 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions in the ball game, and then what makes it even worse, he was their leading rusher, 6 carries for 28 yards. So not a good game for Damian Harris in the ball game.
Nope.
And then their other running back, James White, left the game with a hip injury. Got diagnosed with hip subluxation. If you remember from earlier in the season, that's what Ryan Fitzpatrick got diagnosed with. So I'm assuming it would be about a 6 to 8 week timetable. They haven't officially set a timetable for him, but they said IR is likely for him. So he's going to be out the next couple weeks. So the Patriots are going to have to find themselves or have one of their other pass catching backs step up in this ball game, or going later into the season.
Yeah, and their next game is going to be a huge challenge. This is probably the game of the year everyone's hyping up. And
They already started hyping it up last night on last night's Sunday Night
And that's
Football.
going to be the Patriots have Tom Brady and the Buccaneers come to town. Brady's return to Foxborough. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be a good game. So, that's going to be an exciting one to look forward to.
One of the other big storylines for that ball game, Stein, is Brady is 68 passing yards away from breaking Drew Brees' passing yard record.
Oh, in Foxborough would be... Oof, that'd be pretty interesting.
So he could make history back against his former team in Foxborough.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll watch it, but I might watch it on mute because of how much Brady stroking will be done during that game. So, bottom line from this game, I think this is a fair assessment to say that the Saints are going to be the roller coaster team of the year.
Oh, 100%. It's going to be up and down all season long.
1 week they're going to look like the 76 Steelers. The next week they're going to look like the 2000s, early 2000s Falcons.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a roller coaster ride for them. They've had 2 good weeks and 1 bad week so far.
Yeah. Also, Max struggles, probably going to be first of a little bit of struggles for a rookie, but Pats are most likely just going to be an average team.
Yeah, rookie quarterbacks, we kind of talked about it earlier, but they're 1-10 when they're starting games so far this season. The only victory is Mac last week against Zach Wilson and the Jets. So
someone had to win that
definitely
one.
Got those rookie growing pains at the quarterback position, but let's move on to our next game, which is going to be an AFC West battle. You got the You got the Chargers and the Chiefs.
We skipped a game. My bad. I'm sorry.
I had to jump back to it, but the Chargers end up getting the victory 30-24 as the Chiefs 1-2 on the season, last place in their division. Who
and the scorebook just came up on TV saying the first time they've had sole possession since week 4 of 2015.
Wow.
Of last place in the AFC West. That just shows how bad the Raiders and Raiders have been.
The Raiders, Broncos for a couple of years, Chargers. I mean, pretty much all these other teams. So. But I will say, before we even get to the ball game, one of the big storylines after this game was Andy Reid being taken to the hospital, ended up being diagnosed with dehydration symptoms. So it was an abundance of precaution taking him to the hospital. They said he's in stable condition. Everything's fine. Should be rejoining the team either Monday or Tuesday, so that's a great sign for him.
It did look like a really hot day in Kansas City. It was a sunny day at Arrowhead. So we hope that he's able to recover and hope that this wasn't too much of a distraction for him and his family and the team moving forward.
Yeah, so just wanted to mention that before we get to the actual ball game with the Chiefs. Just not looking like the Chiefs that we've known from the past couple seasons. Stein, their first 4 drives, interception, fumble, 3 and out. So 3 turnovers and then a 3 and out. They got a field goal right before halftime, but in their 5 drives, I mean, getting a field goal was the best drive that they had. Just turning over the ball. They lost the turnover battle 4-0. 2 interceptions for Mahomes, 2 fumbles. 1 for Tyreek Hill, 1 for Clyde. So just not a good and impressive, clean ball game for the Chiefs.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, Mahomes, he's entitled to not be good, sometimes have bad weeks. Like,
he's not going to be great every single week.
He's not going to be flawless, y'all. I hate to say it, but the guy, will have his struggles. And some people are a little criticizing of him because one of his interceptions was a potential no-look pass that bounced off the receiver.
The announcers were talking about it like it was the greatest interception ever thrown because it was a no-look interception where it bounced off the receiver's hands. And then was that the one that was the nice diving catch by Asante Samuel Jr.?
Yeah, Asante Samuel Jr. Now making a case for DPOY, but we'll talk about that next week.
But yeah, so I thought it was hilarious how they were going absolutely crazy about his no-look pass, even though the end result was an interception.
Yeah, but he's entitled to have bad games. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, though, despite the fumble, had over 100 yards rushing. So, finally good to see him at least pick it up a little bit. Yeah, Still has the dropsies, though.
Why did it have to be this week, Stein? I'm facing you in fantasy. You've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He had 2 bad
weeks. He had exactly 100 yards.
Yeah, he was exactly 100 yards, had a couple receptions as well, and then receiving touchdown. So even with the fumble, didn't end up hurting you, and they trusted him even after that fumble in the second quarter of the ball game. But some other guys on the offensive side, Kelsey looked great once again, but Tyreek Hill only 5 catches for 56 yards,
back to back,
and he lost the other fumble. So yeah, kind of back-to-back duds as he only had 17 yards receiving last week against the Ravens.
And nobody's really stepping up in his stead. I will say that they announced today that a certain Josh Gordon will be joining the Chiefs.
Yeah,
as soon as things cleared.
Gordon got reinstated for about the 800th time back into the NFL, and they said that he's planning to sign with the Chiefs practice squad, and he'll eventually be on the Chiefs if all goes well for him. So just another weapon for Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, this Chiefs offense.
Honestly, between after Kelsey and Tyreek, it's really been kind of struggling to find other weapons. So,
I don't think this is a
panic.
A major headline for them with having Josh Gordon signing with the team. I don't think he's shown
he's not
when he's come back with the Seahawks and the Patriots that he really hasn't done a whole lot when he's come back. So I don't think it's that big a news besides the fact that he's been reinstated however many times.
Yeah.
So the Chiefs falling to 1-2 in this ball game, and a great divisional win for this Chargers team, moving to 2-1 on the season.
Yeah, Chargers team that's looking pretty strong, and just a good performance from Justin Herbert again. 4 TDs, spreading the ball around. Mike Williams is looking like a stud, and combine that with Keenan Allen.
Mike Williams has been amazing this season. He had 2 more touchdowns in this ball game. Keenan Allen had a touchdown. Eckler had a touchdown. So all the guys that you would expect from this Chargers offense playing really well. And besides that Cowboys loss last week, they've looked really good these first couple weeks of the season.
Yeah. Bottom line, Chargers are looking pretty slick. I use that word. I think that's a good word for the Chargers. Just slick.
I like it.
Chiefs defensively, I feel like are flawed too. I feel like they had a lot of shortcomings defensively. But the record really doesn't indicate their team.
So it's kind of like the Washington football team, Stein, just flips. So the Washington football team, the great defense, kind of overshadows the meh offense.
Yeah.
So the Chiefs offense really overshadows kind of a weaker defense that they have. So because they had kind of a poor offensive showing, I think that really exposed their defense overall in this ball game.
Yep. All right, moving on now to the game I wanted to talk about, the AFC North battle.
Yes, there we go. We know our divisions.
Yes, even though I always get the AFC North and East confused. Pittsburgh's in the East, but anyways, Bengals beating the Steelers 24-10. Joe Burrow, pretty similar Jameis type numbers, but just looked really good again.
Yeah, Joe Burrow with an efficient day, like you said, just like Jameis, just attempted 18 passes, and only had 172 yards, 3 touchdowns, just 1 interception, and then the big stat, wasn't sacked at all on the day. He had been sacked 10 times through the first 2 games of the season, so the Bengals offensive line really stepping up. You can kind of credit that to TJ Watt not being out there for this Pittsburgh defense.
This broke the Pittsburgh streak of like 50-something games with a sack.
They had a super long streak going of having at least 1 sack a ball game, so TJ Watt not out there, definitely a huge impact. And definitely helped the Bengals offensive line with keeping Joe Burrow upright in this ball game.
Yeah, Mixon was pretty good on the ground for them, leading the rushing attack. But what's a guy that's really emerged as an OOPY?
OPOY.
OPOY. I think I was
your
saying.
dyslexia.
I know, my dyslexia strikes again. Is Jamar Chase. Back-to-back. First 3 games of the season just looked really good. 4 TDs in 3 games. In this game, 4 catches for 65. Not a lot of yards, but he did have 2 TDs.
Yeah, so T. Higgins was not healthy, didn't end up playing in this ball game, had the shoulder injury, so that gave a chance for Jamar to really step up, and he hasn't really flashed in terms of the receptions, but all of his receptions that he's had have been huge.
Yeah, he's had like a 1 deep pass, it seems like, every game.
Yeah, with the 4 touchdowns in the 3 ball games, it seems like probably half of his catches so far this season have been for touchdowns, so has really shown that connection with Joe Burrow going back to their college days. Tyler Boyd had a decent day with Higgins out as well. He had a touchdown in the ball game. And then on the Pittsburgh side, Big Ben's stats looked decent, but a lot of those were just in garbage time trying to play catch up and then checking. Yeah, 58 pass attempts to get 300 yards, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. So no Deontay Johnson in this game for Big Ben. Juju left with a rib injury. He's considered day-to-day.
It got diagnosed today. Another rib injury, Roach.
We've had so many of them so far this season.
One of 30 rib injuries we've seen.
Yeah, luckily not as many as last week, but still just kind of adding up so far this season. But that led to Najee Harris getting 19 targets. Now, that's a running back, Stein.
Yeah.
19 targets for Najee Harris and then another 15 for Chase Claypool. So 34 of his 58 passes went to those 2 guys, which was very impressive.
Down, you can see the averages. 14 catches for 102 for Najee. and for Claypool is 9 for 96. So you can see that's like an average of like almost 9 yards a catch.
Yeah, I mean, just Big Ben did not look good in this ballgame. Going in, dealing with a pec injury, and still, even with losing the weight in the offseason, he's still, just because of his old age, is not very mobile in the pocket, and just a very bad showing from this Pittsburgh offense in general.
Yeah, bottom line with this game, I think the Bengals are developing nicely, Roach, honestly. Yeah. And as we can see on the TV right now, we can look a little bit forward to their next game, the battle of the, I guess, cats in the league.
Oh, that's a perfect Thursday night game.
Yeah, Bengals, Jags. We'll have that, preview probably at the end of this game. A little bit, and we'll give our prediction throughout the week. But Bengals developing nicely, but I think the Steelers, it's like same old Steelers. Are they bad? Because one week they'll look good, and then the next week they'll look like this.
Yeah, they might be kind of a roller coaster team as well, just like the Saints that we were talking about, where they're going to have their really good weeks, but also have the really bad weeks as well. So they definitely need TJ Watt back for that defense.
And everyone's still going to talk about, give them all the praises, but I think this team has a lot more flaws than it shows.
Move on to our next game. We have the undefeated Cardinals staying undefeated on the season and keeping the Jags winless at 0-3 now. 31-19 was the final score, but a little bit of a scare for the Cardinals in this ballgame as the Jaguars were actually leading at halftime.
Yeah, and even put the score up a little bit more in the third quarter. And that was honestly pretty attributed to the special teams of the Cardinals, like we mentioned earlier in the show. 68-yard attempt by Matt Prater to end the half. Kingsbury's decision, kicks it. It's recovered, I guess, in the end zone by Jamal Agnew,
who had a kickoff return for a touchdown last week.
Who was looking like a special teams darling and potential piece for another team if they were trying to sell. 109-yard return for a touchdown.
We had a kick six time.
A kick six in the NFL, which was funny because watching it, for me, I was like, he's going to return it all the way. Like, for some reason, just all the big burleys were out there.
I was going to say, well, that's what they always talked about, the Iron Bowl kick six, Auburn, Alabama. It's like, oh, you attempt that field goal, but you got all these guys in there to block. It's all these big 300-pound offensive linemen. Yeah. So if it ends up being short and where the return guy can get it, you got all these guys trying to run from one side of the field over to the other, and they're just not as fast.
This was James Harrison-esque in the Super Bowl. I don't know if you remember that against, where it's just like, you just see him running, you're like, all right, he's got like 5 guys around him. He's going to get tackled. No, he just kept going, and maybe there were some blocks in the back, but the angles that we were seeing, because it's always weird when you see a kickoff, a field goal like being returned, the angle you get is just really weird.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because you got to like flip the fields over. It's like when you're playing in Madden and there's like an interception or a fumble, you got to wait for the camera angle to turn around.
Yeah, that always messes me up. But I mean, other than that, we did say, we both kind of thought, at least I did, that Kyler was going to have a lot of fun in this game. He had a decent amount of yards passing, but just was not very good with touchdowns as we saw in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, just one touchdown on the ground, no passing touchdowns, even though he did pass for 316 yards.
Yeah.
A.J. Green and Christian Kirk both had over 100 yards receiving. Nuke Hopkins was held to just 3 catches for 21 yards, dealing with, like we said, a rib injury. Kind of gutted through that throughout this ball game. Didn't really need him that much, but Kyler didn't really flash on the stat sheet, but he really didn't need to. James Conner got a couple of rushing touchdowns, which obviously hurt his stat line. So Kyler, in a game where you're playing the Jaguars, don't need to do a whole lot in the ball game. This is the one time where you can have kind of a bad performance.
Yeah, I mean, he's still up there in the MVP conversation despite not having.
He didn't have any turnovers, no fumbles, no interceptions, so didn't do anything to hurt the team.
Yeah, just did his job. And poor Trevor Lawrence for the Jags.
Yeah, 2 more interceptions. I mean, one just off his back foot for the pick six, just looked really bad.
And then a flea flicker that went nowhere.
Yeah, just once again another kind of dud performance for Trevor. He's got 7 interceptions now on the season, tied with Zach Wilson for the most in the league through these first 3 games.
God, I hope the Jets play the Jags.
I think he's had some bigger growing pains really than we expected going into this season.
I think that actually is a matchup, Jets-Jags, at some point in the season.
Oh, God. I feel bad for a fan of either of those teams having to watch that game.
Yeah. James Robinson, though, might be the lone bright spot besides Jamal Agnew. 132 total yards and a touchdown, so nice to see him get involved in the offense.
You saw him get out-touched by Carlos Hyde week 1, then he finally got more carries in week 2, but didn't do much with them. So saw his first game returning to that 2020 form from last year. So that was good to see. And then the Jaguars making a trading their former first-round draft pick, cornerback C.J. Henderson, to the Panthers. Of course, we talked about the Panthers playing on Thursday Night Football, losing J.C. Horn for a couple months.
Former first overall, first overall for them. Pick.
Was a top 10 pick,
like 8th or 9th pick
overall.
Out of Florida. C.J. Henderson going to the Panthers for Dan Arnold. I like this no more Darnold to Arnold connection.
Yeah,
I don't think I've heard
everybody
that.
loved the Sam Darnold to Dan Arnold, but that is no longer after just 3 short weeks. So
how about that for the Panthers, though?
I mean, that's a great move for them. Like I said, losing their first-round draft pick from this past year, J.C. Horn, to a broken foot. And then the Jaguars needing a tight end with James O'Shaughnessy going on IR, so they get Dan Arnold, a big target for Trevor Lawrence, and then also get a 3rd-round draft pick. So
yeah, bottom line for this one, the Jags, I think it might be time to cut them. I think it might be time to say that they're not making the playoffs. Let's cut them. Cut them off.
I hope you didn't think they were actually going to make the playoffs going into this season.
I'm going to say they're officially eliminated now.
Can we eliminate them without them actually being mathematically eliminated?
Yeah, exactly. And Cards didn't have that good of a game as they could have, but they didn't do anything to lose besides maybe trying that kick.
Like I said, when you're playing the Jaguars, you don't have to have your A+ performance. Their B- performance was good enough to still get a double-digit victory, and that's what they had on Sunday.
Yeah, and Urban Meyer's seat, I think, is actually getting a little hot right now.
Yeah, which will happen first? Will he get fired or will he just leave the team?
I don't know if he's going to get fired. I think it's going to be, I think it's the writing's on the wall, though, right now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like he would be the person that would basically he would quit before he got fired.
Exactly.
Like they call him in for the meeting and be like, "Hey, I wanted to talk to you. Like I quit." And they're like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna fire you anyway." So.
Yeah, it's just we could go on and on about that move, but we won't. And now I love this transition going from this game to the 0-3 Jets, falling to the 3-0 Broncos. Let's go Broncos! Broncos pitched the shutout.
I was gonna say the 0-3 Jets putting up the offer on the scoreboard. Yeah, 26.
Let's say the Broncos pitched the shutout, not the Jets went offer.
Yeah, I guess that is the more likely of the scenarios, but. The Jets just 20 points overall in 3 games. Zach Wilson only 160 passing yards.
You want to know a sad stat? The
What's up?
Second best team has 40 points in 3 games. The Jets have half that in 3 games.
I think they're the only team that's gotten shut out so far this season. So
I think they are too.
Because you
had
the Packers.
Oh
yeah, we had the shutout of the Dolphins last week. So I guess that AFC East division, 2 shutouts so far, but 160 passing yards for Zach Wilson, 2 more interceptions. We mentioned with the Jaguars game, he's tied with Trevor Lawrence with 7, the most on the season.
And then he was
getting
killed again.
I was gonna say sacked 5 more times. He's been sacked 15 times this season. That's the most in the NFL.
Wow, that is an interesting.
You
stat.
want to know who's second? Is actually Justin Fields with 11 because he got 9 last game.
Wow.
So a guy that's only started in 1 game is second, and then Joe Burrow.
These rookies are going into terrible situations.
And Joe Burrow is third without getting sacked in their game against the Steelers on Sunday. So
yeah, and you could still almost consider Joe Burrow a rookie from everything. So pretty much Denver did what they needed to do. Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon both get a rushing touchdown. Javonte Williams first, so starting to look like a nice little backfield they have there. Yeah, unfortunately, KJ Hamler does go down, and that's their second receiver to be out for the season. That's going to be a torn ACL for KJ.
Well, their second receiver out long term, so KJ's out for the season. Jerry Jeudy
they still haven't ruled out Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, no, he's a 6 to 8 week timetable, so he'll be back middle of the season from that high ankle sprain. But still, 2 big losses to the receiving core. They still got Cortland Sutton, still got Tim Patrick, Noah Fant from the tight ends as well, but just 2 big losses for Teddy and company. The Broncos are 3-0, but they have yet to play a team with a win this season.
Yeah,
so
between the Giants, Jags, and Jets.
We have 5 winless teams, 5 3-0 teams so far this season. They played 3 of the 5 winless teams.
Who are the other 2 that they haven't played? I wonder.
Let's see. Hold on. I'll pull it up for you.
While we're talking about that, I just want to talk about how Teddy Bridgewater has looked pretty good in kind of spot duty for them. I don't think either of us really see Teddy as the permanent solution in Denver, but in what he's had to do, he's been good, Roach. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. Teddy, he didn't have a touchdown overall in this ball game, but still ended up playing pretty well overall. He's been throwing the ball deep, which is usually not Teddy. He's usually very conservative, so
Yeah.
that's
Kind of a
been
check
pretty
down guy.
impressive. The Colts and the Lions are the two teams.
So they probably have the Colts on the schedule, maybe because it being an AFC team, the Broncos. I don't know. They won't have the Lions because the Lions are a NFC North and not a NFC East. So they do have a chance to play all the winless teams.
Yeah, that would be pretty funny if they played all 5 of those teams.
They will have a tougher test next week as they face the Ravens, so this could really be their first test. Bottom line from this game, though, are the Broncos the worst 3-0 team, and are the Jets the worst 0-3 team?
I feel like you would have to consider them the worst 3-0 team since they haven't played a team that has a win yet this season.
Yeah, and I don't, like we said, Teddy's not a world burner that some of these other guys have been.
Let's see, they
do play the Lions. That must be their game.
That's probably where they finished the same
game
place
17
in the division.
Yeah,
or it could be that too.
Well, no, they're going to be their game 17 because you only play one NFC division as an AFC team. And you remember how they added a game 17?
Yeah,
so the
that's
Lions,
what it is.
wow, they lucked out. Did they play the Colts,
They don't
though?
play the Colts,
Oh,
no.
okay, so I got it wrong.
Oh, that would be funny, though, if they played all 5 teams that have started out the worst.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Broncos stay undefeated, cruise to an easy victory.
Yeah.
Jets still looking for their
And you
first
think they're
victory.
the worst 0-3 team, or them or the Jags?
That's tough. I mean, I guess we'll put them for a tie for last. Since Trevor and Zach are tied for the league lead in interceptions, we'll put them tied for last.
I feel like you should put the Bears there too, even though the Bears are 1-2.
Since they're the worst 1-2 team. We'll put them like at the 27th or whatever it would be.
Speaking of 1-2, the 1-2 Dolphins fall to the Raiders, who are also undefeated, 31-28 in overtime. Let's just say the Dolphins, they're a scrappy team.
Yeah, they definitely are. I mean, we didn't expect much with Jacoby Brissett under center instead of Tua out there. Jacoby Brissett didn't look great. Still was very inefficient with 49 passes for just 215 yards.
Yeah, but did show up in the clutch.
Yeah, I was going to say he had that rushing touchdown on the scramble play on 4th and goal with just like 2 seconds left in the ball game that forced the game into overtime. So just to be in that situation where they're able to force overtime. The Raiders 2-0 in overtime games so far this season, beating the Ravens in the first game of the season on Monday night in overtime.
Which is interesting because they're, I think there's only been like 3 games that have been overtime, and they've been in 2 of them.
Yeah. So, but going back to Jacoby Brissett and the Dolphins, Mike Gesicki, Jalen Waddle is 2 leading pass catchers, 12 targets for Gesicki, 10 for 86. Waddle had 13 targets, 12 for 58, so that just shows how inefficient those targets are and how short that they are. I think I saw something where Jalen Waddle is the first guy since like Brian Westbrook back in 2006 to have 12 catches for less than 60 yards receiving.
Wow, that is interesting stat. And you did remember, everyone remembers that really bad play call where they threw into the flat where Jalen Waddle just get immediately blown up and gets the safety.
Let's throw into the flat when we're on the 1 yard line, have him catch it 4 yards deep in the end zone with no one out in front of him blocking. So
yeah, I don't even know what that play call was. But you really got to give the Raiders some credit too. I mean, Derek Carr leads league in passing yards right now, and he's really spreading it around to some decent amounts of guys.
Yeah, so you saw Darren Waller week 1 have like the 19 targets, but besides that, I mean, Waller's kind
of cooled off a little bit.
I was going to say he's been among their team leading guys in targets, but you see like Hunter Renfrow, Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards, I mean, all those guys getting involved in the passing game.
Zay Brown too,
Or Zay Jones. With the walk-off touchdown.
John Brown.
And then turn back the clock for Peyton Barber as he had 23 carries, 111 yards, and a touchdown in the ball game. No Josh Jacobs once again. Kenyon Drake apparently got benched a little bit because he missed a pass blocking assignment, so he even got a couple receptions as well. Who would have thought that Peyton Barber would have a 100-yard game this season?
Yeah, honestly, they said it was his best performance I think ever.
I wouldn't deny it.
Yeah. So Raiders kind of looking pretty good, but I will say bottom line from this one, we just said the Broncos are the worst 3-0 team. You think the Raiders could also be one of the worst 3-0 teams?
Yeah, I think out of the 5 that it's probably Broncos and Raiders are like 4 and 5 on that list. Like I said, I'd put the Broncos at 5 and Raiders at 4.
Yeah, they still have some flaws, and especially on the defense. Dolphins, we will say, are scrappy and a hell of a lot better performance than last week.
Yeah, I mean, in that AFC East, you definitely got the Bills at the top, like everyone predicted going into this season. But it's definitely a grudge match for second place. The Dolphins at 1 and 2. It's going to be them and the Patriots battling it out for that second spot, maybe getting a wild card spot.
Yep. All right, moving on to America's game of the week, quote unquote. The Bucs losing to the Rams in Los Angeles, 34-24. Rams were in control this whole game.
I was going to say, pretty much the whole game, I feel like it was either tied or they were winning in the ball game. Matthew Stafford just, once again, an amazing performance. 343 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's got 9 touchdowns, just 1 interceptions in the 3 games so far this season.
Yeah.
We'll mention it every single week until it doesn't work. I mean, him and Cooper Kupp's connection has been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Kupp and Williams, Williams, Mike Williams for the Chargers, I've got to be 2 of the best fantasy guys right now.
9 for 96, 2 touchdowns. He's leading the league with 367 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns on the season. Just been absolutely incredible. On the flip side, Brady had to throw the ball 55 times in this ball game.
Yeah, what an interesting stat line for the Bucs.
41 for 55, so a lot of completions, 432 yards, but just 1 touchdown, which happened very late in the ball game to Giovanni Bernard. No picks in the ball game, and once again, kind of like Mac Jones, he was their leading rusher with 3 carries for 14 yards and had a QB sneak.
I guess Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette just don't exist.
Especially when the Bucs are trailing. Giovanni Bernard, who had been non-existent the first 2 games this season, had like 10 catches in this ball game. So
yeah, and I think he got destroyed a few plays too.
Yeah, but that we mentioned earlier that Brady just needs 68 passing yards against the Pats next week to pass Breeze for the all-time pass yards record.
Yeah.
And then one other thing, Gronk left the game temporarily with a rib injury.
Another rib injury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but he ended up returning later in the ball game. He got a couple of red zone looks, so we'll see how he practices this week, if he's going to be available. I would assume so, since he came back.
Yeah, and it's his return too to Foxborough as well, so don't discount that. Bottom line for this game, it's fair to say that the Rams are now the NFC front runners. Bucs needed a little bit of humbling, in my opinion. But we'll probably see
a big piece of humble pie.
We will probably see this matchup again.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, it was hyped up as the NFC Championship preview going in. I think it still didn't disappoint, even though the Rams clearly won this matchup. It's kind of like the LeBron thing. It's like, I'll let you win in the regular season, but when it actually matters in the playoffs, that's when we'll step up. The
storyline for Brady, just to etch another thing in his history.
It happened last season against the Saints, where they got blown out and then ended up beating Drew Brees and the Saints in the playoffs. So.
Yep. And then probably, I guess what I would call the upset of the week, at least in my opinion, was the Seahawks losing to the Vikings 30-17.
I don't know if I called the upset of the week. We talked about in the preview how we both picked the Seahawks, but the Vikings, it was kind of like a back and forth. Like it seemed kind of close.
I guess the Vikings offense has just been looking pretty good.
I would say it was more surprising just because Dalvin Cook ended up being inactive for this ball game with an ankle injury, but Madison,
replaceable. Honestly,
I was gonna say Alexander Madison really stepped up for them. 26 carries, 112 yards, and then receiving 6 catches for 59 yards. So they pretty much just copy and pasted Dalvin Cook, just with a different guy out there in terms of the production.
Yeah, and then Kirk Cousins just throwing the ball and doing what he's just been quietly doing what he needs to do, and had a great game.
Between him and Derek Carr, those have been like 2 of the more I would guess unsung heroes, 2 of the...
Yeah, everyone wants to jump down those guys' backs. But 30 for 38, 323 and 3 touchdowns, just great numbers. And Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, and then even get their tight end Tyler Conklin involved, and Madison, of course, we talked about. So just everyone's kind of and Adam Thielen. How could I forget?
Thielen had another touchdown in this ball game. So just a great performance from this Vikings offense. The Seahawks played decent in the first half, but it's been the second half that's been giving them trouble so far this season. They didn't score at all in the second half of this ball game. Russ had 1 passing touchdown. DK Metcalf had a decent ball game. Chris Carson had a decent ball game. Tyler Lockett posted his first dud of the season, got a little shaken up.
We knew that was on its way, though. After some good performances.
There's not much bad to talk about the Seahawks. It's just that, especially in the second half, they couldn't get any sort of momentum or traction into some of these drives.
Yeah, getting into the bottom line, I like I said, I thought this was a big upset, at least for me. But I think this is pretty similar to kind of last year's Seahawks, like how they just. A game they probably should have won. They just didn't look good. It's just kind of similar flaws to last year. But overall, the Vikings, just a fun offense.
Yeah, and the Seahawks, with how tough of a division that they're in this season, they can't afford to lose too many ball games where they're
with the Rams and Cards looking like they're going to be world beaters right now. Just not looking good. And another team that can't afford to be playing bad is the 49ers as they fall to the Packers in our last game.
Man, another primetime game that was just absolutely spectacular, Stein, is the 49ers were up for the majority of this ball game, and then the Packers took the lead, and then the 49ers, Jimmy G actually leading them on a go-ahead touchdown drive with less than a minute to go, but too much time on the clock for Aaron Rodgers. So with 37 seconds left, he drives him 6-play, 42-yard drive, sets him up in field goal range. Mason Crosby, game-winning 51-yarder. The Packers win 30-28. Both teams 2-1 on the season now.
Yeah, I mean, just a classic matchup. Two pretty good teams. I did feel like the Niners aren't as bad as people think they are. I know I kind of was favoring the Packers heavy in this game, but the Niners stuck with them this entire game, especially towards the end. It's just the problem with them is they just have too many mouths to feed, it feels like.
Yeah, they've been dealing with some running back injuries, which definitely hasn't helped. Elijah Mitchell, JaMychal Hasty, inactive. Trey Sermon, an okay ball game, 10 carries, 31 yards, did get a touchdown from the 1-yard line. George Kittle finally stepped up. He had been quiet the first 2 games of the season. 7 catches for 92 yards.
Ayuk also had a touchdown as well.
Yeah, Kittle had a big 40-yard catch and run on their drive that ended up putting them ahead before the game-winning field goal. Debo did okay in the ball game. Jimmy G kind of up and down, 2 touchdowns, but also had 2 turnovers.
Yeah, the classic Jimmy G didn't do anything to didn't do anything to amaze, but didn't do anything to lose, his starting job.
And then Trey Lance actually had a rushing touchdown in the ball game. They bring him in on a 4th and goal right before halftime, and he ends up running it in from the 1-yard line. Saw him come in on a couple of different plays in the ball game. Jimmy G, like you said, probably will keep his starting job once again for another week. But just a great Sunday night game. Like I said, we've been spoiled with some great primetime games so far this season, and just a great win for Rodgers and the Packers. And they're showing that week 1 performance was definitely a outlier, at least for right now, from the last 2 games.
Yeah. Bottom line, the Packers playing better. That Rodgers-Devontae Adams connection is just...
Yeah, how can we can't glance over that. 18
targets we almost did.
For Adams, 12 catches, 132 yards, and a touchdown. Took a big hit late in that ball game. Thought he was going to be out of the game for a concussion.
He's a champion at taking big hits. He's taken some big hits in his career.
Yeah, they thought he was going to be out of the game with a concussion. Just missed 1 play, and he had 2 big catches on that final drive that set up the field goal.
Yeah. But also, you can't discount the Niners. They really stuck in with them. But, I mean, you're just not going to beat Aaron Rodgers on primetime, especially giving him clock at the end.
Apparently, Jimmy G was like 4-0 in primetime games going into that. So
really?
That was his first loss in primetime. So
it feels so weird because they've been on primetime games, but it's been like freaking David Blau.
I was going to say, it's when Jimmy G was hurt for like all of last season. So they had all their, Nick Mullins.
Yeah, Nick Mullins, David Blau. But David Blau was the Lions guy.
The Lions guy. They had one other dude, but I remember Nick Mullins especially as one of the quarterbacks they had in those primetime games. But that ends up wrapping up our Sunday slate of games. So going into our head-to-head matchups time, we won't have the punishment today. We'll have it for our next show. I flipped the script on you with an 11-4 record going into this Monday night game. We both got the Cowboys, so it's already been decided. You go 9-6 this week. You went 1-3 in those head-to-head matchups. You got the Packers victory, but ended up losing that Saints-Pats game. You lost the Bengals-Steelers game.
Yeah, that was a miss. And then that was our
the Rams Bucks game was the last one. So 1-3 head-to-head, which was what put you under, and so we'll have that punishment for week 3 in our next podcast. But overall in the season, 31-16 for me, 29-18. Hey, I'd say those are
Those are pretty good winning
pretty
percentage.
stout records. So.
Yeah, and I think this Cowboys game is looking kind of, even though it's halftime, Cowboys got a pretty big lead right now, so I think we're sitting pretty comfortable. You're probably going to go to 32, and I'm probably going to go to 30 wins. So
the big
I'm
3-0.
happy. I'm happy to be there, Roach. I'm just happy to be here.
Hey, a second place team. Hey, you're probably going to make the wild card as of right now. So.
Exactly. That's a pretty good record.
But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for our week 3 recap. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram at the Couch Quarterbacks. We'll have our week 4 preview coming up later on in the week, and we'll have our punishment as well, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But this has been the Couch Quarterbacks podcast. We will see you guys